There is a dangerous kind of beauty attached to suffering. You can see it everywhere now. People wearing burnout like a badge of honor, treating emotional chaos like proof of depth, romanticizing sleepless nights, toxic relationships, self-destruction, loneliness, exhaustion, as if pain itself automatically makes life meaningful. And somewhere along the way, many adults quietly stopped trying to build peaceful lives because struggle became part of their identity. They began admiring brokenness more than stability. The starving artist, the emotionally tortured thinker, the exhausted worker chasing dreams while collapsing internally. And tonight, we are going to talk about something uncomfortable. What if part of your suffering continues because you have unconsciously started romanticizing it? Not consciously, emotionally. Because there is a difference between enduring hardship while building a meaningful life, and emotionally attaching yourself to struggle so deeply that peace begins feeling unfamiliar. And many people no longer know the difference. Imagine a man sitting alone in a dim apartment at 1:47 a.m. Empty coffee cups beside his laptop, unread messages piling quietly on his phone, a to-do list half finished. He tells himself he is grinding, but deep down he feels exhausted. Not fulfilled, not inspired, just tired. Yet strangely, part of him feels proud of the suffering, because modern culture taught him something dangerous. If you are constantly struggling, you must be becoming someone important. So he keeps sacrificing sleep, ignoring his health, neglecting relationships, living chaotically. And every time life becomes more dysfunctional, he reframes it romantically. This is the price of greatness. But eventually another thought appears quietly. What if I'm not building a meaningful life? What if I'm only becoming emotionally attached to survival mode? That question changes everything. Because many adults are not trapped only by hardship. They are trapped by the identity they built around hardship. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche famously wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But modern culture distorted this idea. People now glorify the how while forgetting the why. The suffering itself becomes the personality. The exhaustion becomes the story. The chaos becomes the aesthetic. The dysfunction becomes proof of ambition. And slowly, people stop asking whether their lifestyle is actually sustainable, healthy, or meaningful. This is especially common among intelligent, emotionally intense adults. People who secretly fear ordinary life because stability looks boring from the outside. Routine feels emotionally uncinematic. Consistency feels unimpressive. Peace feels almost suspicious. So people unconsciously create emotional turbulence to continue feeling psychologically significant. But dysfunctional life is not automatically a meaningful one. And pain is not proof of debt. There is a hidden psychological reason people romanticize struggle. Struggle creates identity quickly. A person who feels lost can instantly become the overworked one, the misunderstood one, the exhausted dreamer, the emotionally damaged one trying to survive. These identities create emotional certainty, and certainty comforts the nervous system, especially in modern adulthood where many people feel psychologically directionless. Suffering can make people feel important temporarily. It creates narrative, drama, meaning, at least emotionally. This is why some people unconsciously sabotage peace, because peace removes emotional intensity, and intensity became confused with purpose. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard warned that many humans distract themselves from genuine self-awareness through emotional chaos and endless stimulation. Modern life amplifies this. People stay busy constantly, overworked constantly, emotionally overwhelmed constantly. Not always because life requires it. Sometimes because stillness would force them to confront themselves honestly. And that silence feels terrifying. Imagine someone finally getting an entire free weekend alone. No obligations, no emergencies, no deadlines. Instead of feeling relaxed, they feel anxious, restless, almost because their nervous system became addicted to chaos. Without struggle, they no longer know who they are. This is one of the strangest psychological traps of adulthood. People begin rebuilding the very suffering they claim to hate because it became emotionally familiar. Carl Jung believed humans unconsciously repeat psychological patterns until they become conscious of them. And many adults unconsciously recreate instability because dysfunction became associated with identity, ambition, passion, or worthiness. The artist who only creates while emotionally destroyed, the worker who feels valuable only when exhausted, the person who mistakes toxic relationships for emotional depth. All are trapped inside the same psychological pattern. They romanticized suffering till peace started feeling emotionally empty. There is another reason struggle becomes addictive. Validation. Modern culture constantly rewards visible exhaustion. People receive praise for overworking, for sacrificing themselves endlessly, for hustling, for staying emotionally available to everyone while collapsing internally. Very few people receive admiration for building calm, emotionally stable, sustainable lives. But functional living is far more difficult than dramatic suffering, because functionality requires discipline, not emotional intensity, and discipline feels less cinematic. Waking up consistently, maintaining routines, managing finances responsibly, sleeping properly, building emotionally healthy relationships. These things look ordinary externally, but psychologically they require enormous maturity. The Stoics understood something modern culture forgot. A peaceful life is not a shallow life. It is an organized one. Marcus Aurelius did not romanticize emotional chaos. He emphasized inner order, self-governance, clarity, discipline. And perhaps modern people struggle so deeply because they continuously consume chaos while secretly craving structure. Social media intensified this dramatically. People now aestheticize suffering constantly. Burnout becomes content. Depression becomes identity. Loneliness becomes personality branding. And eventually people stop healing because healing threatens the identity structure built around pain. If you are no longer the struggling one, who are you afterward? This is why some people unconsciously resist change. A functional life feels emotionally unfamiliar. There is another painful truth hidden beneath all this. Many adults secretly fear ordinary happiness, because ordinary happiness lacks dramatic intensity. It arrives quiet. Morning coffee without anxiety, a stable relationship, financial stability, consistent habits, peaceful evenings. No emotional fireworks, no chaos, just steadiness. And for nervous systems conditioned by instability, steadiness initially feels emotionally underwhelming. But healthy living was never meant to feel like constant adrenaline. The problem is that modern culture trained people to confuse stimulation with aliveness. So calmness feels boring. Yet the people most emotionally at peace often live the least dramatic lives. Not empty lives, structured lives. Now let's explore 3 psychological frameworks behind romanticizing struggle. The first is identity through suffering. Some people know who they are only when struggling. Pain gives them narrative certainty. Without struggle, identity feels empty or unclear. This creates unconscious resistance toward healing because healing threatens familiarity. The second framework is chaos addiction. The nervous system adapts to emotional environments repeatedly experienced over time. Someone raised around instability may unconsciously recreate stress because calmness feels emotionally unfamiliar. Chaos becomes psychologically stimulating. Peace becomes psychologically uncomfortable. The third framework is delayed living. Many adults postpone life itself, waiting for some future transformation. I'll rest after success. I'll enjoy life later. I'll slow down someday. But eventually years disappear while people remain trapped inside permanent survival mode. And survival mode slowly destroys emotional presence. Now here is the important question. What does building a functional life actually look like? First, it means respecting reality instead of performing struggle. A functional life is not glamorous. It is sustainable. You sleep enough, eat properly, manage responsibilities, protect your mental health, maintain relationships intentionally. Not perfectly. Consistently. The second step is separating meaning from suffering. Pain is sometimes unavoidable, but unnecessary suffering is not proof of character. Exhaustion is not automatically ambition. Emotional chaos is not automatically passion. Being overwhelmed is not automatically depth. Sometimes dysfunction is simply dysfunction. And recognizing that truth is emotionally liberating. The third step is learning to tolerate peace. This sounds strange until you experience it personally. Many people sabotage healthy routines because stability initially feels emotionally flat. But peace often feels unfamiliar before it feels beautiful. Like leaving a loud room and entering silence. At first the quiet feels uncomfortable. Then eventually restorative. The fourth step is building systems instead of relying on emotional motivation. Functional lives are built through structure. Morning routines, financial discipline, healthy boundaries, consistent sleep, focused work. Not dramatic bursts of inspiration followed by collapse. Emotionally mature people stop worshipping motivation. They build systems that survive mood fluctuations. The fifth step is stop performing suffering socially. Not every struggle needs audience validation. Some healing happens privately, quietly, without turning pain into identity. Because the more publicly attached someone becomes to their suffering, the harder it becomes psychologically to release it. The sixth step is defining success differently. Not through exhaustion, not through appearance, but through sustainability. Ask yourself, can my current lifestyle realistically support long-term peace, health, and emotional stability? Or am I slowly destroying myself while calling it ambition? That question matters enormously. The philosopher Albert Camus once wrote that real rebellion is creating meaning consciously despite the absurdity of life. And perhaps today, one of the most radical acts is building a calm, functional life in a culture addicted to chaos. Imagine a small apartment early in the morning. Sunlight entering quietly through the windows. A person wakes up rested, makes coffee slowly, exercises, reads, works with focus, talks honestly with people they love. Nothing dramatic happens. No emotional collapse, no chaos, no exhaustion being glorified. Just stability. And strangely, this kind of life now feels revolutionary. Because many people became so accustomed to dysfunction that peace started looking empty. But peace is not emptiness. Peace is space. Space to think clearly, love honestly, create consistently, exist fully, without constantly surviving yourself. There is a Japanese concept called ikigai, a reason for being, not based purely on achievement, but balanced, sustainable meaning. Modern adults often chase intensity while secretly starving for balance. And balance requires something difficult. Letting go of the emotional identity attached to struggle. Maybe you are not meant to remain the exhausted version of yourself forever. Maybe healing does not make you shallow. Maybe structure does not make you boring. Maybe peace is not the enemy of depth. Maybe peace is what finally allows depth to breathe. Imagine standing beside a river after years of surviving storms at sea. At first, the still water feels unnatural. You keep waiting for chaos to return. But slowly, your nervous system softens. Your body stops bracing constantly. Your mind stops constantly. And eventually you realize something extraordinary. You were never addicted to suffering itself. You were addicted to familiarity. And now you finally have permission to build something different. Not a dramatic life, a functional one. A life where your nervous system is not constantly at war with your own existence. Maybe adulthood is not about becoming endlessly productive or emotionally intense. Maybe it is about becoming stable enough to experience life fully without destroying yourself in the process. And perhaps the deepest form of self-respect is this. No longer treating your suffering like a personality. No longer worshipping exhaustion. No longer confusing chaos with meaning. But quietly building a life that actually supports your well-being. Not someday. Now. Because eventually you realize the goal was never to become impressive through suffering. The goal was to become alive enough to experience peace without feeling guilty for it. If this resonated with you, share your thoughts below. Sometimes hearing another person describe the exhaustion we quietly normalize helps us rethink the lives we are building. And if you enjoy calm reflections on psychology, philosophy, and emotional growth, you can subscribe for more.